Hello, everyone. My name is Kayla Myers, and I'm a programmer here at Indie Memphis. And welcome to our last live Q&A of the festival. We have here today with us Anwar Jamison, the director of Coming to Africa. Anwar is a Memphis-based filmmaker and writer, and I'm really glad that we're ending our live Q&As with this film. We'll hopefully be joined by his co-star Khalil Kain a little bit later. But first, Anwar, I just kind of wanted to hear from you about, so your film is a romantic comedy. And so I just wanted to hear first, like, it's a romantic comedy, but it's also exploring some issues about Black Americans' ideas about Africa and Ghana in particular. And so first, I just wanted to hear from you about why you sort of situated some of these issues that you're exploring within the genre of romantic comedy.
It was somewhat by chance. The romantic comedy angle came more from the influence of Coming to America, I would have to say. And when I originally envisioned the movie and gave it that title, obviously playing off of the title of Coming to America, I really wanted to take the opposite approach. First, I just knew I wanted to do a movie set in Africa. I had some connections in Ghana where I felt like I could pull this off and it would be a great thing. And then I decided what type of story. And then I said, if I could take two people and have them go the other way, the same way Prince Hakeem and Simi came this way and come in America, what would that look like? And I built on that. And then I wanted to get certain elements of it. I didn't want to try to mirror that plot or really tell that same story. But obviously, that was a man coming over here to find his queen. And while it's not literally a man finding a queen, I said, what better way to explore some of the topics in the continent of Africa than through a woman, through a love story? So, in a way, I wanted it to be kind of symbolic, of a man finding completion through finding a woman and realizing that, some of all these other things that he needed to discover by himself kind of came that way. So I didn't set out to make a romantic comedy. And when you get finished, you have to put it in some type of genre. I still didn't really know. And people start calling it that. And I'm like, yeah, I guess it kind of is a romantic comedy. I explored so many different issues in it that I knew I wanted to explore that I didn't really know what to call it. And then it was just after watching it several times, I'm like, okay, I guess you could say it's a romantic comedy.
Yeah, something that I found really interesting is kind of about how each of them, Adrian and Adonis in particular, sort of approach the trip to Ghana in different ways. And I think this kind of gives them a different arc when you're watching the film. Like Adonis visits museums, and Adrian is kind of the more like party kind of route. So I kind of wanted to hear from you about why you wrote each of them that way. If you want to also kind of look at Buck as well, and sort of what you were thinking when you were writing the three of them and writing about their time in Ghana.
That was exactly what I wanted to get across. That was a direct reflection of just two different types of characters that we'll see in the community, archetypes, you could say. The person who's serious about going to Africa and has researched it and thinks of it as this cultural awareness. Because most of the time when we talk about going to Africa, if you're the type of person who says, I want to go to Africa, that's usually why. People usually associate it with a cultural awakening or something like that. But I also wanted to take a character and say, hey, that's not all there is over there. There's certain places you go, Spain, Italy, London, Brazil, or wherever, we go to the islands all the time. And you're not always thinking about a cultural awareness when you go to those places, even though there's a ton of culture there. Most of the time, you're talking about having a good time. If you like to drink, you're talking about going to have some drinks. If you like to go to the club, you're talking about going to the club. So I wanted to show, hey, if you're that type of person and you just want to go over there and maybe have, a bit of that cultural awareness, but also, hey, I want to have fun while I'm over here. I want to be comfortable. I want to see the malls. I want to see the clubs. I wanted to actually show those places, and that hadn't really been shown in American cinema that way. So that was my idea of the two characters. As you just put it, and you explained it as well as I could. Pretty much, you got it. Those two characters, I wanted them on those complete paths. But what we see is they both come a bit closer together. Adrian obviously does, but Adonis can kind of loosen up too and say, hey, there's other things over here too. I can have fun. And then with Buck, the character, the oldest brother of the three, just kind of being that guy. And I wanted that character in there because this represents an aspect that we have a lot of times. And there is a barbershop scene, but you would say barbershop talk, or just these conversations we have in the African American community. There's this whole debate, that we go back, friendly debate. Like, what do we need to do? Do we need to do this? Do we need to be spending, more Black dollars in the community, or do we all just need to be going and attaining the highest positions we can in corporate America? And then you bring that back to, all of these conversations that we have. So I wanted him to represent that person who's ultra conscious, who's kind of always been on that, who's been kind of trying to pull his older brothers in that direction, kind of with mixed results, and you can see one brother has kind of followed that path more closely than the other.
Yeah, that kind of plays into another question that I wanted to ask you is sort of the movie opens with Buck and Adrian having that conversation and kind of talking about the business that Buck wants to start. And so I was really curious about sort of why you started the movie that way, and just wanted to hear more from you about sort of what you just talked about in terms of these different approaches that people have to building communities and investing in the Black community. And of course, Buck is very much like trying to divest from some of the more corporate way that Adrian sort of thinks that he can elevate himself and then elevate our people. And so I was really curious about why you opened the movie that way and sort of what that does for you, thinking about the film as a whole.
Oh, you asking some great questions, by the way.
Thank you.
So that scene and what he's describing, I really wanted that to set the tone and give a purpose for where all of this is going. And the business he's describing is not really to a T what I had, but back in 2016, and a lot of people forget this. So this summer, everything that went on, a lot of the uprisings, a lot of the protests, a lot of the feelings people had, I kept hearing people say, we've never seen anything like this to this magnitude. And I'm like, go back and look at your social media timeline in 2016. I'm like, dude, does everyone not remember? That's the summer that made Kaepernick start kneeling. That's why he kneeled in August. That summer, I say, even to a larger degree, this summer it felt more. There were a lot more people outside of African Americans as a whole. So that was a great thing to see. There was more of an awakening. There was, whether it be corporate entities, whether it be just people of different races outside the race. But in 2016, I had never seen anything like that. People were fed up. People were protesting. They had a meeting. I can't remember the church over here in Raleigh that I went to. The fire department was having to turn people away. I mean, when have you ever seen a community meeting called and people were bringing their kids? It was like this mass movement that just sprung up grassroots, 2016. So I started thinking, everybody says, well, and people were talking about boycotting it and buying Black and spending Black dollars. And I was just like, well, yeah, that's good in theory, but we always only get so far. I mean, there's only so many Black businesses who sell certain things. So I had actually come up with a plan. I kind of put it down on paper, and I was going to try to like circulate it and get people, and interested in it, and actually try to do a certain thing that was kind of similar to what he was saying. And then I just kind of, I just didn't really feel like people were ready to hear it or weren't going to, I just kind of put it on a back burner. But I said in this movie, I wanted to allude to it. So this is like a surface level idea of something that I actually thought about. But in this case, I said it would be more symbolic of the conversations that we have. So if as African Americans, the things we want to do for ourselves, and I keep saying African American, so everybody out there, for those who are not African American, always stress for people who want to see America as a whole be the best country it can be, and always say that anything is better when the sum of its parts are better. So people who are not Black should want Black people to be doing better. Like, you don't even have to help, or just, it's like, just don't stand in the way of it, it's, but it was that kind of thing. So it's really symbolic of what can we do without without financial monetary gain being the end goal. Because there's certain things that we can do for ourselves that we can roll our sleeves up and do that would just take some commitment. It would just take a little sacrifice, and it wouldn't be all about wealth or personal wealth or all that, but it would really help the community, and it would spread out to all kind of other things. And this is nothing I made up. I mean, a lot of people in history, a lot of great minds have talked about this. Every generation this comes up. So that was me putting a fictional version of that into the movie. I purposely wanted it to be a little vague. I didn't want it to be all the way concrete. I wanted you to feel like, oh, he's just talking about that thing we all talk about that we never can put our finger on, but it's that thing. So it kind of represents that.
Yeah, that really comes across, and it definitely very much ties into, I feel like, conversations that we've been having throughout the festival, but also throughout the summer and throughout the years, in terms of like moving towards ways that are caring outside of just wealth, and how can we accumulate wealth. I also want to remind people watching that I'll ask Anwar a few more questions, but feel free to put your questions in the chat on YouTube or Eventive or Facebook, and they'll be forwarded to me when we get to the audience Q&A portion. I want to ask you another question sort of about these themes that you're exploring, and then I also want to ask you a little bit more production sort of questions. The other thing that really comes across is sort of, again, this sort of dispelling of the myth of Africa, the myths of sort of what Black Americans have their own ideas of in regards to Africa. And so I think that really comes through in the conversation that Adrian and Akusa have later on, where he's talking about the DNA test that people take here and things like that. And sort of just throughout the movie, sort of discussing that. It also happens in the barbershop when everyone is telling that man that it's not one country, that there are 50, like multiple countries in Africa with multiple ethnic groups and languages. So I just kind of wanted to hear you again sort of discuss kind of that theme throughout the film, and you sort of working through that as you were writing the film, but also as you were editing the film after you shot.
Absolutely. Self-identity is an important thing. And for African Americans, again, I'm not saying anything new. We're unique in that way. There are people on this planet who are, very much less fortunate, in their day-to-day living conditions. But I've just always said that, I mean, there's something about that. There's something about, if you are a Mexican American, you've never been to Mexico, and if, maybe you don't even speak Spanish, but there's this place right there, there's this flag, there's this language. You can be 35, 40 years old and one day just say, look, I want to go to Mexico, I want to learn to speak Spanish better, I want to pick up this flag. And I don't know, necessarily saying it's going to be this magical transformation, but there's something with knowing that, just being able to say that and claim that and know that there's a place that you descended from. And so that affects, that affects all us in different ways. I think, it leads to a lot of the different conversations we have, and a lot of issues. I always say it gives all of us different side effects, just that we deal with, just based on that alone. So it puts us in a position where we're always having to define ourselves. And that's a lot, to define an entire race when you have different cultures within that race and subcultures within that race. So I wanted to put that in the movie. And again, in the spirit of making it lighthearted, with the conversation is, kind of lighthearted about it. And that's how I wanted to treat the movie. A lot of these issues, I wanted to be able to address them, but not make it, it's not a documentary. I didn't want it to be overly serious. It's not overly dramatic, but it did need to be addressed. And I thought putting a Black man from America in Africa having these conversations with someone in Ghana would just be a powerful juxtaposition to see. We're sitting here on this couch having this conversation about this, and a lot of us would like to have that conversation with someone in Africa. We just really don't. So I thought it would be a great way to weave it into the narrative and just kind of make a point about self-identity in that way.
Yeah, I think that really comes across, and also just the the being reminded that we're connected, that we're a diaspora who's connected, and that we can have knowledge and support each other here in the States, but also support each other in Africa and Ghana and Nigeria and all these other countries. I think that's another thing that really comes through, particularly with sort of looking through the self-identification. Um, Now we're going to move on to a little bit talking about the production process. And you've talked about this quite a bit, but for those people who haven't had the chance to hear you talk about it, first, I'm just kind of curious again to hear you talk about how you filmed here, some in Memphis, and then did the rest of your production in Ghana. So first, if you want to just talk a little bit about how you one decided that you were going to film there and make those connections and use local crew and all of those things that are really important to one using people from the community to make a film, and also just sort of how you logistically sort of went about it doing an international, like a co-international production.
Well, yeah, I had a couple motivations for making sure that everybody, first of all, if I was going to go to Ghana, I wanted the majority of the crew to be local. I just did. It wouldn't have made financial sense was the other thing, but I wouldn't want to do it anyway, to take an entire crew from over here just for the amount of plane tickets and lodging and the extra things. It wouldn't have made sense, but I wouldn't have wanted to do it that way anyway. So once we had Ghana had been in my mind for years and years and years. This is probably, again, we always have debates among my friends and family how long I've really been talking about this, like 7 years, 10 years, 11, it's something like that. So I knew it would always be Ghana. And again, I had the connections. Power Uhuru was one of my co-producers, co-star, and also my cousin. Um, Him and his wife have gone over there and built relationships, have been going over there since 2006, going back and forth, living there, really being kind of entrenched in the culture. So my producer PY, that came from that relationship. But even before I connected with him, I was reaching out to people. Had a couple false starts in that, but just trying to find people on the continent, doing productions. It was funny. I met my sound guy, Say Foss, who's is a good friend to this day. Will always be a friend. I found him on Instagram because there was a company who they were promoting. Like, when you look for it, let us be your bridge between America and Ghana. And the woman who runs the company is Ghanaian, but she went to film school in New York. So she was kind of promoting, if you want to shoot on the continent, we'll help. But she wasn't really responding to me. And when she finally responded, I told her I was ready. Then she fell out of touch again. So I saw one of her productions on Instagram, and I just saw the sound guy was tagged in it. And I said, let me DM him. And we started this conversation like, hey, bro, I'm coming over there to shoot a movie. And we started talking. I'm like, how many other crew people you know? He's like, I'm on a set right now. And he put the WhatsApp up to them, and we're talking on the line. So some of the crew actually came separately that way. So when I hooked up with PY, my producer, they found out they had a previous they had worked together like some years before. So I actually put them back in touch, and they rounded out the whole crew that way. Over here in Memphis, we had cast the parts in Memphis before we left. They were doing casting auditions simultaneously over there in Ghana, which it was just one of those things by chance. I didn't know they were doing it at the exact same time. We were like, wow. But they recorded all the auditions for me, filled up the room, line was wrapped around the corner. They were really excited about this movie when they found out about it. So when I landed, I cast the Memphis parts before I left. When we did the auditions, I took the video with me, because I knew we would shoot the Memphis parts when we got back. So I flew over there on July 2nd last year, with my videos on my laptop from the Memphis auditions. Sat down as soon as I got over there, watched all the Ghana auditions. We picked the actors. The main actors, Nanama McBrown, who ended up playing the lead, David Donto, some of the other actors, a couple of the leads, I knew I wanted them. They're very significant actors and actresses over there. Miss McBrown I just tell people she's the biggest star in the country. I'm not exaggerating, like she is. It's really amazing. And David Donto is really the most revered actor in Ghana. He's like, going back to the 80s, if you say who's our greatest of all time, they'll say him. And I was fortunate enough to be able to get him in the movie. So that came together that way. We rounded out the cast. we hit the ground running. We had the crew. We were over there close to 3 weeks. And then we came back to Memphis, already had our date set up. We had about 2 or 3 days break when we landed. And then that just felt like smooth sailing. I'm like, okay, we're back home. We went over there and did that. I'm like, now we can come over here and do this. So my director of photography, Ellis Fowler, he was one of the keys going back and forth, went there with me and came back. We met back in film school. We worked on my first film together. So this is my first time able to get him back. I'm like, bro, if I do this one, you have to come to Africa. I needed my DP. That's my guy. That's my cinematographer. We speak a common language. He understands my eyes. I understand his. So having him, I can't stress enough, took a lot of weight off me, especially having to act in the movie, which I wasn't planning to do at first and had to do it the last minute. That made it a lot easier to direct and act when I had him with me. So when we got back, I knew Memphis would be a breeze. We were just coasting to the finish line. So we just had a few more days, about 4 more days in Memphis, and we wrapped it up.
Yeah. I guess my other question that I want to ask you in terms of production is just also um, location scouting. I think that's one of the things that's so important for people. And sort of how did you do that from Memphis in Ghana? And did any of those things sort of change once you got to Ghana? Or sort of what are some of those challenges that you kind of had to navigate, being your first time filming there, but also it was your first time in Ghana too?
Yeah, what was funny, I have to thank my crew. In Ghana, I have to thank my crew. They had ideas again. PY, my producer, had all of the connections. I mean, he's just, we needed a club. He already had the club in mind. We need a hotel. He had it in mind. He had all these things in mind. He had relationships. So it was funny because after the first couple of days, when we got there, I pretty much had to hit the ground running. We got there on a Wednesday. We kind of relaxed on Wednesday, went and got something to eat, went and heard some live music, had a good time. And the next day it was time to get to work. I started watching audition tapes. So after we got to work for those, I was dead tired. I think that jet lag had kicked in. So I think it was like Friday, and the crew, they're ready to go. Like, yeah, we're going to go look at all these locations. And I'm like, y'all got it. Like, I trust you. I said, Ellis is going with you. Ellis, take pictures. I'm like, I believe you, but I can't move right now. So I was happy. So they went, my assistant director, Frank, who also went over there with me, Basira Muhammad, my production manager over there. I tell her that's my little sister for life. I have a Ghanaian sister now. And they went, all of them went. It was about 5 of them. And I got some good sleep and I caught up and got my head back to life. They brought the pictures back. I said, yes, they're all good. I knew I could trust you all. So I pretty much let them handle that. I was worn out from everything else that I had to do. And in Memphis, it was just what I'm used to doing. Now, the actual shop that we use for the barber shop, again, my cousin, that's actually his shop, Nappy by Nature, him and his wife. So, I mean, his character, a lot of the things in it is based on this type of character. So the walls, some of the artwork on the walls in the shop, the whole look of it, I was like, I couldn't make that up. No art director could come with the look of that shop. I was like, it's perfect. So that just fell in place. Other than that, I'm like, okay, I need an office building. That was just me with my producer had on. I knew we didn't need a lot of locations. So from there, I just filled in the gaps and just got what we needed here in Memphis.
Yeah, that really comes through. And I have definitely been to that barbershop before. Now that you mention it, I was like, this looks so familiar. And that explains it.
Right.
And I think the other really, really interesting element that I wanted to ask you about before we open it up to questions were two things: sort of the food and the music present in the film. Those are the food is sort of this moment of sort of cultural learning for Adrian, especially like fufu and some of the other dishes that are featured in the film. And so I guess food becomes another point of connection for all of them, kind of like it always is. And so I wanted to hear from you about that, sort of the dishes that are featured, and sort of did the Ghanaian actors and your crew sort of contribute to that at all? Or was there some sort of research you did before to decide which dishes were going to be included?
there was no research ahead of time. It was natural. They kind of led the way on that, like pretty much what should be here. And the food, I was literally slightly depressed when it was time to get on the plane. I literally was like, what am I going to eat when I get home? I don't want to eat that stuff. Like after being over there, and I'm telling you, the food is so organic and fresh. And if you have some fish or if you have some rice, like you feel like they just pulled it out of the water. And I mean, it feels so good. I can literally see people wouldn't know the scenes that we shot first, last, or the order, but I can see a slight, I can see the difference in size in me. I mean, I was in better shape when I came back from eating that food for 2.5 weeks because oh my God. And it's just, these rice-based dishes and beans and wache and garden egg stew and all of these dishes. So that was one of the most the greatest part of the trip. I'm telling you, the food is it's indescribable. So the scenes where we actually have food, yeah, they're pretty much in our art director, our the people on set, the crew, I kind of let them handle that and it came out. But in between shooting, I just say the food is one of the greatest parts of Ghana, and the music, it's just a vibe. Like when you over there, it puts you in that. I wanted to capture that in the movie. So I got to give credit to PY again, my producer. When it came time, the club scene, the song that's playing on the dance floor, that's by Stone Boy, who was actually one of the artists who was supposed to be here for Memphis in May. Hopefully, now that they've pushed everything back a year, he'll still get to come. But he's a really big artist over there. My producer PY helped launch his career through Bless the Mic, an event that he throws over there. But when it came time for the dance floor scene, we were in the club. We shot that at the end of the day. We started maybe 9 in the morning. We had almost a 12-hour day. It's about 8 o'clock by now. People are tired. I'm like, oh, but we had to get all the dialogue and everything first. And I'm like, the last thing is going to be the dance floor scene. So I walked through the club and I'm like, all right, now everybody who say you can dance, I want to see it now. And we got to the dance floor scene, everybody perked up and they were ready. So I just asked them, what song on the dance floor do we need to play? I want it to be, this is the one that represents God. And at PokeK, everybody, they start putting it on, playing it. And then after we did that, everywhere I went, I would hear that song. It's called PokeK. And it was like, I'm trying to think of what to compare it to over here, like back in Lil Jon's day, maybe when Lil Jon was at his peak, whatever his crunkest song was. But whenever you heard that song, the club would just go crazy. So when I put that on, that energy in that scene, that's real energy. I thought I was gonna be directing the dance floor scene, and it was like catch up. Once the song came on, like, okay, get this, get that, get this, let's just go. I didn't have to do much directing. It was more like catching up to them and getting the shots. And the rest of the movie, throughout, and the rest of the music, PY, that was just him. He picked it, he sent me some things. And at first I was like, just hurry up. I'm editing, send me some things. I just need some music in place. I was like, if we have to change it up later, we'll change it up. And when he sent me the music and I picked from it, I'm like, no, this is not temporary. We keeping this music. Make sure the artists know. And then, he had relationships with all the artists where he could let that go. And then as far as the score music was over here, I have to give a shout out to the Memphis Music Bank, who also co-sponsored this screening for this evening, because I went to one of their events just on accident. I got a flyer, and it's a really great event for filmmakers and musicians. Everybody should know about that. They actually take a filmmaker, take, their scenes, the filmmaker scenes, give them to two musicians. They go home and sit with it for like a week or two or whatever, and they come together and battle, and they'll play the same scene back to back. Like they'll show you what this musician came up with, what this musician came up with. The judges judge it, the audience judges it. And I was like, that was the coolest thing. So Kirk Smith won that day, but he was the score. And right after that, I was looking for the score. I needed a score. I approached Angela Green, who's over the Memphis Music Bank, and we made it happen. We all sat down and met, and Kirk did a great job on the score and really was able to tap into the vision I had and bring that across.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. And I was like, I want a soundtrack and I want to be able to like find all these artists and listen to.
It's coming.
Their music.
Soundtrack coming soon. So look for that mid-November ahead of the worldwide release. You will have the Coming to Africa soundtrack. Yeah, because when people see this movie, you're going to want to go back and hear some of those songs. I promise you.
Yeah, I already do. I was like, dang, I need a playlist so I can know people and get hip to it. Um, I'll ask you one more question and then we'll move into audience questions. So if the audience, remember you can send questions in the chat and they'll be forwarded to me and I'll ask Anwar your question. I think the other thing that I'm really curious about hearing from you is sort of um, if you were to give someone advice on sort of doing like an international production. You've already sort of spoken about how you sort of went about this, but if there are things that you have really learned that you think are really beneficial for other filmmakers to maybe know, especially if they're here in Memphis and maybe want to do a similar thing to you, like what are some things that you would say or suggest?
I would suggest be really diligent and do your homework and research. I didn't mention I did a lot of research before I went. A lot of the script was, I mean, pretty much the script was written. When I got over there, certain things were confirmed and validated. But I originally thought I would have time to take a trip first to see it for myself, and then the second time shoot the movie. And that didn't happen that way. I had to go and do it when I could do it. So I would say really be thorough with your research so you can be respectful to the culture. That's something I really wanted to get across. I wanted them to know this is a love letter to Ghana in a lot of ways. I'm being as respectful as possible. I was checking with the actors and actresses. Okay, this is cool because certain stuff is a comedy. You don't want to be making fun of somebody. I'm like, if I think this is funny, let me make sure it's just funny in the context what's going on here. I wouldn't want it to come off like I'm, cracking a joke on anything or anybody or the culture, which there was nothing in there that I thought would be that way. But everybody kind of validated. And when they loved the script and were like so many of them and the actors and actresses, Paulina Adro in the movie who plays the mother, she has stopped doing movies for a while. She just said she was getting the same stuff. She's a musician too. So she's like, she'll focus on music. She was really kind of disillusioned with the script she was getting. So to hear her kind of grab me to the side at first and say, finally, somebody's telling this story. And that was the type of validation. So I would say, do as much research as possible. I did that and kind of nailed a lot of things that were kind of true to what Ghana is before I even got there. And then just make sure, you have a good connection in that place and somebody like I have PY, because he was able to walk me through any doors. If something was able to pop up that seemed like an obstacle, then he was able to clear it. Because the one thing I knew, I have confidence in my directing ability. I have confidence in my script. Once you get me to the set, I knew I could direct. I don't care what actors. If we didn't even speak the same language, which they speak English, I would have confidence in getting my point across somehow. It's all the things around it, the logistics, getting to the set, the travel, the where you're staying, being comfortable. We had to make sure all that was good. I knew once I got to the set is the set. And I knew I would direct once I got there. So that was just important. Having a good contact in place would be key if you're doing that, and somebody who can really walk you through all the doors you need to get through.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such good advice. Our first question that we have is from Aventive. They're asking, how did you secure a name actor for your film? And how can a filmmaker work that into an indie filmmaker budget?
Great question. And here's the thing. And what I found out is IMDb Pro, right? $20 a month. I spoke to a lot of name actors representation in this process for different parts. There were others I was going to have. One I was supposed to have. There's another story who didn't show up. But even the ones who, there were so many other people who, oh, he would have loved to. This story would have been cool, but he's filming this. He's committed here. He's committed there. But everybody's contact information is available. So what I found out is if you want to secure a name actor, is what do you have to offer when you get to them? Because the thing is, you can get to them now. You can get your script in front of whoever you want to. And then when you think about on a budget, it becomes the daily rate, right? So if everything's going to be based on a daily rate, or the negotiations are going to start there. So what I did was I looked at, what scale would be, and modified, low budget, all these things. Like, hey, could you do it for this? Like, no, you have to come up to this. Okay, I can come up to this. And if you don't need that name actor for a lot of days,
Mhm.
then that budget becomes more manageable. Like, whoa, I could kind of, swing this. I could actually afford this. So that's the thing I would say is, if you have a script that you think they're going to believe in, and you're confident in what you do, it's like the world is open to us now. I remember music back in the day, in my music days, when I thought, I was going hard at music, and there were these books and people had these big binders. This is every record label, and these photocopy things. You don't even know if the numbers are good anymore. They would get passed around like, I'm giving you this, and now it's like, hey, we have access to everybody's contact information. So just make sure you're confident in what you're presenting to them, and you can get to them. All they can say is yes or no. I'm busy on those days. It doesn't work. They'll negotiate with you if you have something that they're interested in and you're confident in.
Mhm. Yeah. That's our only audience question so far. But so I want to remind the audience, if you have questions for Anwar, please feel free to put them in the chat, and they'll get forwarded to me, and I'll ask them to Anwar. So Anwar, I'll ask you another question. Since we didn't get to have Khalil in the conversation today, it'd be interesting to hear sort of how you went about actually like getting him in your film, and sort of what it was like working together, and what you felt like he and your other actors sort of added to the film, both like the Ghanaian actors and the other actors who were in your Memphis scenes. So. We'll answer in 1 second. While we wait for Anwar to come back, if you have questions in the chat, everybody watching.
Okay, sorry about that. No distractions. So working with Khalil was, the thing he told me before he came was that, I'm not going to be on none of that diva BS and all this stuff. And you hear people say, that old saying, you never want to meet people you're a fan of because they'll disappoint you and all of this stuff. And I can imagine, right, that happens sometimes. In this case, it was the opposite. So he's somebody I've been watching for, I mean, how long ever, and just to see the way he came in and really embrace what I was trying to do. When he showed up, he walked on the set. He was exactly who he said he was. When he just said, I'm just going to be one of the team, and that's it. He really was. And he just really was kind of like his character. He was that big brother figure, kind of giving wisdom. Um, and that's how he is to this day. If I talk to him on the phone, and I know he's supposed to be in, I know it's something really going on for him not to be in here, because everything, I mean, he doesn't just do that. It's like that kind of thing. I'm sure he's going to hit me like, bro, this went a little longer. I know he actually had a photo shoot today for something, so I'm assuming that probably went longer than he thought, because I know he will be in here. But he's just kind of that guy. He put everybody at ease. He wasn't overbearing. He didn't come on like, I've acted more than everybody, I have the accolades. He would just kind of sit back quietly. If it was a suggestion to make, he would kind of make it, and it would be cool. He was just kind of this and that, like, yeah, you're right. But he never did it like, yeah, y'all listen to me because I'm the vet. But he just had that presence. He would offer suggestions. And even now, if we having a conversation about something specific, it always turns into him giving, knowledge and wisdom. All of a sudden, he'll be giving me these little jewels. And man, he really is just a cool guy. I couldn't believe how humble and down to earth he was. And he really made it easy, because if somebody comes on, their energy is going to it's going to bleed into the movie. If somebody comes on with that, it will put everybody on edge. I would feel the need to cater to him. Like if the name actor came and complained about this, that, I would be like trying to make sure that he was good. So he was really great about just really blending in, and everybody just after a minute, he just really was like everybody else, and we got the work done.
Yeah, that's great. His down to earthness does really come across in this particular role that he's playing. Since we don't have any other audience questions, Anwar, is there anything else that you want to say about the film before we wrap up the conversation?
It's just, well, first of all, catch it this evening. If you don't catch it this evening, it will be on streaming platforms worldwide, November 27th, Black Friday, day after Thanksgiving. And it'll be Amazon, Google Play, Apple TV, and Vudu on November 27th. And I just really want people to enjoy the movie, and if you see the movie, go on social media, let people know what you think. I'm not one of those people, oh, go on IMDb and give me 10 stars. Like, no, I really want to know what people think. So I've been fortunate that a lot of the feedback has been great up to this point. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Just I appreciate everybody. And if you get a chance to watch it, take a look at it. I think it's something in it for everyone. I'm an African American filmmaker. It's a film about Africa, but it's not just for African Americans or just for Africans. A lot of the themes are universal. I think everybody can relate to discovering yourself, being the best you can be, falling in love, and all of those things. So I look forward to everyone seeing it, and I look forward to the reactions.
Thank you so much, Anwar, for being here today and for your film. And thank you for, I feel like this was a great Q&A to sort of end our live Q&As at the festival on. So again, thank you so much for being here and your time and your film. And thanks everybody for watching, and enjoy the rest of the festival.
Thank you very much, Kayla. I see all y'all around.
Bye.